Aloha and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Jürgen Steinmetz, joining you from the Breaking News Show in Honolulu, Hawaii. With me today is Tim Crisman. I have to ask where he's joining us from, but I know he's probably in New York or Washington, or where are you?
Just outside Washington, D.C., Jürgen.
Washington, D.C. I
Yeah.
thought so because he's involved in a company, what is called, he's the executive director, better, for the Association for Space Financing Foundation for the Future. This sounds really, really exciting. And those that watch us frequently, we had a guest and talked about the possibility of space tourism just a few weeks ago, a gentleman who joined us from Switzerland. And but Tim is up to something different, and I haven't figured it out. I think he runs also, it's a marketing company, wanted to establish hotels on Mars. I don't know. I'm just making this up. But Tim, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit more what you're doing and who you are.
Yeah, gladly. I'm born and raised in Alaska. It's a travel show, so a lot of people like hearing that I'm from Alaska because a lot of them want to travel there. I wanted to travel out, so I got my fill. I'm done. But born and raised Alaska, was in the U.S. military for a while, and about 2 years ago, a little more, started this organization called the Foundation for the Future. It's a nonprofit. And the idea is it is helping draft and advocate for policies that will advance long-term investment in space infrastructure. And so we define that as physical, spaceports, logistics integration, human, the workforce to actually build it, and then finance, the bonds and loan guarantees. And that's where the Association for Space Finance comes in. It's the industry association for space investors. So we represent their interests to Congress. But what we're ultimately trying to do is make space boring enough to be real. Space is this cool, sexy place, but nobody really believes they can go there. They're not an astronaut, they're not a rocket scientist. And so it's not even on people's list of places to go, even though this year is the first time anybody went to space for less than $1 million a piece. Virgin took a handful of people up. They didn't disclose the price, but it was less than $500,000. And so while that's out of reach for the vast majority of humans,
including me,
that's coming down an order of magnitude over just the last 5 years. Most astronauts going into space have cost anywhere from $25 to $100 million per seat. And when private citizens try to do that, there was one that did it a while back, that went to the International Space Station. They're paying upwards of $100 million. And so the fact that just in the last 5 years, the price has come down to $500,000, with multiple companies, SpaceX included, saying they want to get it down to where the price of a ticket to space and through space is roughly the cost of a business class ticket, transcontinental. So
wow.
$5,000-$10,000.
Well, that would be amazing. And I know about maybe 6 months ago or a year ago, I can't remember exactly, the Chinese were talking about working on a project where they can actually, I guess, enter space, get back on Earth, and solve the distance between Beijing and New York in just in a couple of hours or so.
Yeah.
Is this something what is for real, or
Yeah, no,
or
it is.
wishful thinking?
No, there's a handful of companies that are working this around the world. In the US, there's at least 3 that are working on hypersonic aircraft. So these won't go all the way into space, but they will take you basically anywhere in the world in 90 to 120 minutes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. and they take off and land just like an aircraft. And yeah, it's the promise of them is truly incredible. A couple of them at test flights, I think, as early as 2025, and looking at starting service around the 2030 mark. A handful of I can't remember the airline right now, but a handful of airlines have started talking to some of these developers about leasing the aircraft. So there,
And
it's
how,
like serious.
and of course, the whole world right now is talking about climate change. I know when we had Professor Lippmann on our event and we
Yeah.
touched this issue, said, "Oh my God, I mean, I hope this would be the end of the world, pretty much, to offer this because it would be so hard on the environment." Is it hard on the environment?
Um, yes. In the sense that any air travel is hard. In it's a similar environmental impact to the aircraft that it's would replace. It's going to be more of an impact per passenger because these will hold fewer people, but it'll roughly be the same as a 747. So not as good as the newer ones, but not not like a rocket.
Okay. And and how safe do you think it could be before, or and you said there, of course, there's the development. We're talking several years or maybe even several decades
Yeah.
away. And but how safe could this be? I mean, I'm probably way too chicken to get on a thing like this. But
Well,
I
no, and
don't
that's
know.
fair. So a lot of this is based on technology that was developed in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so that was used on, intercontinental ballistic missiles or other experimental military systems back in the day. And it just, military sort of got bored with it or moved on or whatever it is they do. And so these companies have adapted it to basically a different airframe than a nuclear missile. And so long story short, a lot of the bugs were worked out in the military development. Now, granted, it's a different platform. You still need to revalidate all that safety. But, the core technology behind it is already vetted. So
And there goes probably the cooperation with this world we're living in right now, with all these different tensions, Russia, China, and so forth. Is there going to be a cooperation to make this work, or can one country like the United States just do it?
um, the I doubt there'll be cooperation, in part because the same technology that can be used to make these aircraft, these hypersonic engines, are what can be used to make missiles that also move just as fast and can get anywhere in the world. And so Russia, China, the US are all developing these. None of them wants the other to get it. And so it's unlikely they're going to cooperate on the civilian side of this out of concern that something could be used by one of their adversaries. I do think, in a decade or two, this is going to be ubiquitous and it's going to be, a similar level of technology that to the Pratt and Whitney engine that anybody can get it if you can pay enough, and it's just easy.
So it's like building a whole new different type of aviation industry. I mean, if you
Yeah,
look aviation 150 years ago, there was no aviation.
right.
And and now there already is space, not travel, but there is space movement.
Hmm.
So maybe it could really become. I mean, hopefully, none of us can look 100 years ahead of it. But if you could look 100 years from now, do you see this? We're not going to have airports. We're going to have spaceports.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it's going to the transition will look very similar to when we added air travel in as a mode of transport. We still had sea travel, we still had rail, we still had, ground, so cars, buses, trucks, etc. But those people who wanted to go faster and have more convenience took the aircraft. If you wanted to move large amounts of cargo, it's sort of a stair-step pyramid of how much of each of these modes of transport is used. And I think we're just going to be adding another layer to the top of that pinnacle, where those people who, for business or personal reasons, absolutely want to be somewhere really fast, will take this. There's probably not a need for the vast majority of people and the vast majority of cargo to move that fast. And any technological advances that allow this hypersonic transport is also going to reduce the cost of regular air transport. So it's not that eventually this will get to be the same price as flying in an airplane. It'll always be more expensive and be that next level up, which is something we haven't had. We've been flying the same speed in airliners since what, the 1960s?
Yeah, and what happened if you go back and talking about the same speed? We had the Concorde, and I was one of the people who actually was able to travel the Concorde one time from Paris to New York and then on to Washington on Air France. I never forget this. It was a really, really interesting experience. We took off over Paris and we crossed England and the Channel, and then it felt like we're taking off again. And all of a sudden, everything outside is dark blue, and it looked fantastic.
Yeah.
We had good food, and we landed in New York and had breakfast all over again. So why did this stop? I know they had a terrible accident. I understand this, but accident usually never stopped aviation from progressing. So why did this stop? And why would it not stop for your initiative?
Yeah, so it seemed to stop it because it was already, so the Concorde wasn't very economical. I think Air France was permanently losing money on operating the Concorde. And there was a ton of government regulations around when they could increase to supersonic speeds. A lot of people complained about it. And so the accident was almost a convenient excuse for regulators and governments to say, look, you just need to wind this down. It's not working for anybody. And so since then, there's been quite a few technological improvements to help with the sonic boom. NASA's been doing a ton of work on this for several decades now. So that way you can fly supersonic even over populated areas, and the sound, instead of it being, like an explosion, is like a small firework. And the safety that comes with several more decades of learning on other aircraft and the improvements that have been made, 737 MAX notwithstanding, are things that can apply to this new mode. And so between those two and the space tourism that sort of resets a price point for people, that instead of directly comparing it to air travel and saying, oh my God, it's 4 times the price of a ticket, they can say, oh, look, we're only, a fifth or a tenth the price of the true luxury flight. So all of that will help.
Right. Now, your company is involved in securing financing for these type of activities. What do you guys do?
So we're the industry association for those investors. So essentially a union where these investors pay to be members, and we develop policies and advocate for those and regulations to help support expanding access to capital for the space sector. And that includes hypersonic flight.
Now, it's maybe it's one of your trade secrets, but if it isn't, who would invest in this now? What type of companies? You looking at Boeing or Airbus or
So
Emirates or
yeah, so the our membership ranges from family offices managing the money of high net worth individuals all the way through Barclays Investment Bank. Basically any sort of finance entity in between. And so all of those types of investors are investing, as are some of those large aerospace companies. Governments are, and then there's starting to be interest from these sovereign wealth funds. UAE, Saudi Arabia are starting to look at diversifying into investments in this sector. And so I think UAE is one that you're going to see a lot more investment come out of. They really want to be the space hub for the Middle East. And so expect them to invest heavily in that.
wow. And now, are they currently investing, or are you just talking about it right now, how to invest?
No, so they have made some investments, whether it's in other funds that are investing in space or directly in companies that are developing the tech. But there's been talk that both the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund and the UAE's version of that are looking to create basically dedicated investment vehicles for the space sector, whether it's to finance spaceport development locally or incentivize companies to relocate, or just invest in tech that can help advance the sector. Sort of an all of the above.
Yeah, and of course, you're talking about UAE and Saudi Arabia. There seems to be a competing situation
Yeah.
between the two countries. We are self going to be attending the World Travel and Tourism Council in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and our safety security team was briefly involved in a project in the Red Sea in Saudi Arabia, and and there is billions to invest, and
Yeah.
they have billions to
Yeah.
invest. So that sounds quite realistic. So if they're invested, what companies are looking for investors, or they already have investors, or what is done to develop it right now? Is it more talk, or is there already active work being done?
There's quite a bit of work being done. So far this year, about $20 billion has been invested in the space sector. And that has gone to startups that are creating new forms of new kinds of satellites, these hypersonic vehicle manufacturers like Radian Aerospace. There's cyber and sort of server startups that are trying to put server farms in space, and a number of the big launch companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin and Virgin. So it sort of runs the spectrum of company types that are getting financing, and really the last 2 or 3 years have been fantastic for investment in the sector, in terms of it growing rapidly.
Yeah, and of course, when you invest into something, you want to see a return,
Right.
and this seems to be more like a long-term project. So how likely is it that you see a return in your lifetime on this?
So most of the investors are expecting a return in the next 5 to 7 years, and we've seen so early investments in like SpaceX returned between 5 and 10 times their value in that 5 to 7 year window. There's a handful of other companies that are already generating revenue, whether from the government or commercial sector. And so it does look like some of these are going to be revenue generating companies in the near term. Now, that's more on the satellites and satellite servicing, but these like hypersonic launch vehicles, they're trying to figure out how can they get revenue from a government or cooperate on government contracts to start getting revenue to help sustain them. But even they are saying, look, we can do this pretty fast. This is not going to be the same development timeline as Boeing or Airbus. We just don't have the same bureaucracy that's going to slow this down.
Now, and your what is your business model? You take a percentage of out of the investment, or
So
you
we're a
guide people?
nonprofit.
Okay,
Yep.
but
So we,
non-profit means you have to live,
well,
right? You have to.
well, sure.
You're doing it for a reason.
Yeah. So we have corporate membership. So companies, whether they're finance companies or startups or just general space companies, pay to be members, and we help them both network with the investing community and connect them wherever we can to government entities that may be looking to buy the whatever good or service it is that they offer.
So you're doing you're creating networking events like trade shows or
Yeah.
similar type of events, or
Yeah. So we hold like a monthly virtual conference where we bring in the leaders from companies that are in our network and outside to talk about what things they're working on, what they need, how people can get involved. We then use that and take that footage, deliver it to Congress and congressional staffs and executive agency branch people, and then we also then have participate in networking events and try to connect these companies wherever possible to who they need to be, whether it's investors because they're trying to raise money, other companies to share tech and create joint ventures, or government customers.
yeah. And you mentioned the Congress, you mentioned U.S. Government, but you also mentioned you're working with UAE and Saudi Arabia. So it's an international movement. It's not only available in the United States. So you're bringing investors together, let's say from the European Union, from Australia, or from other parts of the world to combine resources here.
Yeah, so we're focused in the US on the policy work. We
Okay.
know the laws and the policies, and so that's where we're focused on that. But we are trying to expand our network and access across the world. So we're talking with Australia, UAE, Luxembourg, Japan, to try to make sure we have the broadest network possible internationally, to both to help ensure that there's a robust investment pipeline, but also because we know that not all the good ideas live in America. And so wherever we can, we want to pull in ideas from wherever they happen to be and try to connect them with other entrepreneurs who are working similar problem sets.
Well, that's a fascinating conversation. I hope we can continue this and maybe invite you to one of our live stream Q&A events.
Yeah.
I think the travel and tourism industry is should be quite interesting in what you're doing. So, Tim, we have our half hour, but if you can stay on for just a second after this, and I get back to you. But for everyone else, I wanted to thank you for watching this. And if you have missed the first part, just stay tuned. As you know, we're going to repeat it every 2 hours for the next 24 hours, depending when you see this. And then, of course, you find it on our YouTube channel, on our Vimeo channel, and you find it on breakingnews.travel. And if you read any of our publications, eTurbo News, Aviation, and so forth, just click on events and on our link to YouTube, and you can watch this again, because it was an interesting discussion. I really enjoyed it, and hopefully we can stay in touch. Tim, and good luck with everything you're doing. And maybe we forgot to mention, if someone wanted to look you up, you have a website, right?
We do. It is f4fspace.org. So the letter F, the number 4, the letter F, space.org.
Yeah, and you see it on the screen right now. And so if you wanted to get in touch with Tim or see what he's doing, just go to the website. It's on the screen, and get in touch with him. If you lose his contact, feel free to click on contact on eTurbo News, and we'd be happy to connect you. Again, thank you so much, and aloha from Hawaii, and hopefully we talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jürgen.
Aloha and good afternoon or good evening or good morning, wherever you are. My name is Jürgen Steinmetz, and I'm joining you from the breaking news show in Honolulu, Hawaii. And with me today is a gentleman, and I'll let him introduce himself before I mispronounce his name, but he's joining us from London. And what we're doing today, World Tourism Network is proud to be a partner with the Tourism Hospitality Development Sustainability Show, what is called Reset. It's not a show, it's actually an event, a one-day event in London at the Hyatt Churchill Hotel, and it's on the 16th of September. And we're partnering with the organizer to promote this event and let the world know what it's all about. So you're going to read a lot about it on eTurbo News. And anyone from World Tourism Network, any of our members listening to this right now, if you wanted to attend, you can actually do this. Just go to our website at, the website wtn.travel or worldtourismnetwork.org, same thing, and click on new events, and it's right listed there. There are two upcoming events listed right now we're partnering with. The first one is actually the Reset Tourism event on the 16th of September. And then we're going to have a big show coming up after this. It's also in London. So we're going to be in London twice. It's the World Travel Market. It's from the November 7th to the 9th. And we're planning all kinds of things at the World Travel Market. So stay tuned. And this is in addition to all our different Zoom events, they're still coming up and you also find on the website. But without further delay, I have to apologize. I wasn't really 100% prepared. I just told him this for this conversation here tonight. It's nighttime here right now. So I let the gentleman who is going to be part of a panel in the hospitality discussion at Reset introduce himself and tell us a little bit more what he's doing and what this panel is about. Welcome to Breaking News Show.
Thank you very much, Jürgen. It's Adam MacLennan here from PKF Hospitality. We're an international firm of hotel consultants, and what we'll be talking about, and very excited to be part of the Reset agenda on the 16th of September. There's a long list of great panelists and speakers to talk about how we can all do our bit to reset hospitality in a sustainable way, and it's very ably led by Nikki Page and her team. She's asked me to come on and talk a little bit about our panel. We'll be talking with Professor Willie Legrand, who's probably one of the most eminent academics in the field of hospitality and sustainable hospitality and hotel operations. He's just come out with the 4th edition of his new book on that topic. And Robert Godwin from the Lamington Group. Now he is a developer of the first lifetime, I don't want to get this wrong, but the first net zero whole life carbon hotel in London. It's an apart hotel in Chiswick, and he'll be talking a little bit about his process of developing this carbon whole life carbon zero hotel. Wow. It should be a really good panel, but we are one of about 10 or 15 different panels throughout the day, includes lunch. You can stream it online if you're not able to get to London for that day. There are some limited availability of tickets at the Hyatt as well. So it should be a really good event, and PKF and I are certainly very excited to be part of it.
Yeah, no, it definitely, it's something special, and Reset goes right along what we have been doing here at World Tourism Network, is rebuilding travel. And that's what we're all doing in the world, because the travel industry, of course, has been hit by COVID. Now, discussion probably along the line with carbon neutral and so forth is a big discussion everywhere. I can tell you here in Hawaii, we must have the only tourism board in the world that really doesn't want any more tourists. We're full. So there is no advertisement and there is no promotion of tourism because we really have enough tourism. And that, of course, I don't know how this goes along with the hotels. So far, hotels apparently are full. They're okay with this. I don't hear much. But you being in the hotel and hospitality industry, you're promoting responsible tourism, as I can hear. How do you put this all together? I mean, we want to promote tourism, but we also want to be environmental friendly, and we want the hotels to generate a profit. How could this all work together?
Sure. Well, I think it's a very good question, but it's an important one because obviously sustainability is environmental sustainability, but it's also economic sustainability. I think the tourism industry has a lot of work to do to allow people to travel. People want to travel. People enjoy travel. To travel in a sustainable way, and to help the economies and the local population who may be working in the hotels, to help the local environment. And there are ways of doing it. There are lots of countries. Maybe Hawaii has too much tourism, but there are lots of places that would benefit from the economic impact that a tourism development might have on it. But it has to be done in a way which doesn't destroy the climate, doesn't destroy the local ecosystems and structures that the local people rely on to make a living, to exist within. So it's a challenge. We've worked typically on all sorts of different types of projects, from resorts in remote places to city hotels, in big convention hotels. And all of them we all have to do our bit. I'm sitting in London at the moment, where we're sort of gearing up for another heat wave. The temperature in London hit records this year up to over 40 degrees.
Wow.
And it was crazy. It was hotter than
You're
Dubai.
going to be freezing here in Hawaii when you get there. It's 27, 28 all the time.
But it's the second heat wave in about a month. The air conditioning's broken in our office, and this is something that's happening more and more regularly all over the world. And so sustainability and climate, the climate crisis is obviously real, and we all have to do our bit to make sure that the world's not going to stop automatically. People still want to travel. People still want to have a nice existence, and we've seen that with COVID. You mentioned COVID. We've seen people stop traveling, but they didn't want to stop traveling. They had to stop traveling. As soon as they were allowed to travel again, they did. And you mentioned the hotels are filling up again in Hawaii. You've got enough. Thank you very much. We're ready. And it's that urge. We are a social group, a social species. We like to go and visit parts of the world and meet people and do things. And so how can we do that? How can we reset the industry now that COVID's over? Hopefully, well, it's not over, but the worst of it seems to be past us. How do we reset it sustainably? And I think this conference will help people get ideas. There are people from Saudi Arabia talking about projects. There are people from all over the world that are going to be talking about projects and what they're doing locally to reset sustainably. Nikki and her team have developed some great tools and some great systems in house to do that, to help hotel owners, hospitality and tourism professionals to develop more sustainably. So those things will all be highlighted, and I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for people.
Now, the panel you're attending or leading, tell us a little bit more about this panel. What are you guys going to discuss, and who's going to be on the panel?
Sure. Well, I haven't met. I've met both of the panelists many times, and they're very, very passionate about what they talk about. We sit on some councils together on sustainability, and we'll be talking about how more on the operational side and the value side of it as well. So we'll be hitting a little bit about how it can be done. You mentioned something earlier in your question, and I don't think I touched on it, but how can you do this and turn a profit? It's easy to be sustainable if you don't mind about making money, but how do we do that at the same time as making a profit? And I think ultimately those questions used to be hard to answer, and now they're becoming easier. Robert Godwin is a business person first and foremost, and he has developed a hotel, spending their own money and obviously borrowing money to develop it as a whole life, first net zero whole life hotel. And he's going to talk about why he did it and how it was important. Obviously, climate change is important to him. It's one of the important metrics, but also he wants to make a business that's profitable. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And Willie has been observing the industry and taking data from the industry and writing textbooks about this particular topic probably for longer than anybody, and waving the flag very vociferously to all who will listen, and teaching the next generation of students about how important this is and how they can do something about it. So he will be hopefully presenting some good ideas as to how people can actually make a difference within their properties or within their hotels, and also why it's important from a financial perspective. There are all sorts of things happening in Europe. I'm sure they will happen elsewhere as well, in terms of we're talking things like stranded assets. If you don't do something, the governments of various countries are going to make it so that your value of your property will decrease if you don't make it sustainable. The operating costs of running an unsustainable hotel for things like gas and oil and all of these things, which are, in Europe at the moment, I'm sure all over the world, are increasing, and quite rapidly. They're being taxed more heavily, as well as scarcity because of the wars in Ukraine, and so how do we combat this? Well, we figure out ways of making our properties more sustainable, and that's one of the ways of doing it. And hopefully Willie will touch on some of those things. I'm sure we'll think of lots of other interesting things to say. We'll have a tight schedule, but one where we'll touch a lot about a lot of those types of questions.
Now, for those that don't really understand what you're saying with net zero, what is net zero?
Ooh, that's the question I wanted to ask Willie, because actually there's net zero in operation. So you're not using any additional carbon, or you're offsetting the carbon that you're using to heat and to operate the hotel. But then there's the whole life net zero is also the construction of the building, the materials that went into it, the supply chain that you're using. How do you sort of reduce the emissions and the impact that your building has had, or is going to have by building it, and by the whole life cycle of the operations and everything else, to have zero carbon emissions throughout the life of the hotel?
And of course, it's hard to understand because, I mean, there are, for instance, initiatives. You can pay so much more on an airline ticket these days or in a hotel to offset your damage. But how do you do this? I mean, you're not offsetting anything. You're just giving more money, isn't it? Like this, or where's the money going?
Well, that's a very good question, and I would hate to. It's a very hot topic, and people are passionate about it, and there are people who are way more knowledgeable about this than I am. Offsetting is often not the ideal solution. So if we talk to Greta Thunberg, probably she would have one opinion, which is on one extreme end, and I'm very grateful to her for what she's done. And then others would say, well, you can, there's a financial solution to it, and it brings out a lot of passion because it's such an important topic. Offsetting is not ideal, but some of it needs to be done. If you're planting trees in a certain place to absorb more carbon, that money that you've spent to plant trees might help to reduce. But those things all have to be tested, and it's challenging. So oftentimes, people are paralyzed with fear to do something because the thing that they think they're doing, which is correct, somebody else will turn around and say it's not perfect. But ultimately, we all have to do something. So we may discuss some of these types of things. Robert has a prime example of what he has had to do. They might be offsetting some of their emissions at the moment, but they're trying to reduce them as much as possible to start with, reduce the impact, and then do things that are positive in order to offset them. If you can.
No, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, but it is hard if you're from a consumer's perspective. It's really high tech talk, and no one really has an answer. And I hope someone comes up with a guideline for a traveler, for a simple traveler who said, yes, I want to travel responsible. How would I do this? Should I pay you more money? Where does this money go? What do I get for this money? Or should I ask to have my room only cleaned once a week instead of I think every 3 days is now normal, no longer every day? Or is this only because we don't have enough maids anymore because people found other jobs? It's hard to really understand how to operate, and also as a guest to be a responsible guest and offset your damage. Because once you're in this environment, you want to enjoy the hotel, you want to enjoy the destination. Here in Hawaii, a lot of people talk about respecting culture. Well, I mean, I lived here for 35 years. I haven't seen much of the culture. Yes, of course, it's there. But putting guests through a training to come to a destination so they understand the culture, what really is almost distinct. It's it's very hard to understand, I think, really from a perspective. And you said you're in the business of building hotels and planning hotels, right? Is that something you're doing?
So we advise people who do that. We're advisors. So we run feasibility studies we're famous. Famous in history for helping to develop the uniform system of accounts for the lodging industry. So we develop sort of financial statements for future hotels by understanding the markets, the unique selling points of a particular market and a particular property within that market. And we try and understand what the demand for hotel rooms would be, or for tourists would be for different segments of demand, and then help developers to develop a picture of what their property might do, what it should look like, how many rooms should it have, what sort of amenities should it have, and so on and so forth. And increasingly, sustainability is at the forefront, or should be at the forefront of everybody's, and net as low as possible, or zero as well, at the forefront of everybody's mind. I think Nikki and her team are developing some tools to. I think the golden ratio is something that they're going to talk about. I don't want to get too involved in that because I'm not the expert, and I'll butcher it, as they say, in her explanation, but I'm sure she'll come on and speak to you about that, or one of her colleagues will, to help the tourist, to help the individual. I'm the same way. When you go to a hotel, how do you find out? There's a lot of work to be done. It is confusing for the tourist, for the individual who's trying to do the right thing but doesn't know exactly what the right thing is. We all have to educate ourselves, but we also, as businesses, where we're not in the business of educating people, we're in the business of entertaining them and giving them a good time. We have to provide the right sort of systems so that they could do the right thing without having to think about it. And I think that is the challenge that we have.
Now tell me, you mentioned Saudi Arabia, and we have reported a lot about Saudi Arabia recently in the world, because Saudi Arabia is becoming a center of tourism with $49 billion to spend. The tourism development in Jeddah is astronomical. It's amazing. Sometimes people forget, there are thousands of people that actually live along the coastline that getting evicted. They're getting no compensation for it. These are all what doesn't sound a lot of it. This is definitely not sustainable. So how would you advise a client, like, for instance, in Saudi Arabia, who has any amount of money to spend to be sustainable, to build a sustainable environment or city? Is this really happening?
Listen, that's probably a little bit beyond what I can talk about right now. I know that there's a session at the conference that with Dr. Omar from the Red Sea Development Project in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We'll be talking about that tourism
Right.
development. I mean, what I would say to anyone who's considering developing and whether they were the king or I mean, this is a personal feeling, whether they were the king of the country or just a developer in the country, is that you will be basically judged on what you do, and it's important to people won't want to visit you. Tourists won't want to visit you if you do the wrong thing, because now in this day and age with instant access to media all over the world, if you want to get international tourists to come and visit you, it's difficult to do so if you're going to do the wrong thing by the people in the country, with the wrong types of developments not being sustainable. Now, I'm sure, and I'm not advising on these particular developments, so I don't want to. I'm sure that somebody is telling them this and that they're aware of it. And I, I'm not a politician and I'm not into politics. I'm a business person. But my feeling is that you need to take into account the people that live there. But development is always going to be, have. Some people think you should have no development, and other people think you should develop sustainably, and other people think it doesn't matter. It's all about money. The money talks. We can build houses for somebody else somewhere else. Some people might think, well, these people, were living on, weren't necessarily, contributing, or maybe they can now have jobs in some of these properties and improve their quality of life. So it's a tricky subject, and I don't know what's going to come out of this interview on that. But hopefully, I won't come across as an evil person. I think it's absolutely important that in any big development and in any master plan that we take account of everybody's, every stakeholder in this, and that's the local community as well as the people who own the buildings, and as well as the tourists who are going to come and visit, and the supply chain that can perhaps make a better living or a more sustainable living by supplying this industry.
Well, what do you think are the basis for, you mentioned in the beginning about remote destinations. We have been very involved with Africa. I don't know if you know this, but I'm the founding chairman of the African Tourism Board, what we started, what it's now has its own life and is in 20 some African countries. I'm dealing with requests. Just yesterday, I talked to a gentleman in Niger, what is not really the safest place on earth, but they're serious about, and they have committees and they have money behind it now to build a tourism industry. Similar discussions had been taking place with several countries from, in Africa, what most people haven't heard about and haven't heard the name about. So how would you advise a new region that wanted to develop tourism to go about? Is there like a general basics? Of course, transportation is a big issue, but let's, if we put transportation on the sideline, what are the basics for tourism?
I mean, I think again, we have a division which focuses specifically on that. So I'm not an expert on tourism master plans and those types of things personally. We have a really, really strong division that talks about those things. I'm happy to introduce them to you. But as a hotel advisor, I can say that one of the main things that we look at is can people get there, and why would people travel there? So what do you have that would make people want to travel there?
Right.
Is it industry? Because obviously lots of people travel for work. That brings people in it. People who travel for work spend money and stay in hotels. So that's one thing. But if they're doing it as a tourism thing, what if you've got locally that can be amplified and shown to people that will provide them something that they don't get at home, and that's important. And they have to feel safe. I mean, not everybody. Some people are thrill seekers and they don't mind going into a war zone, but most people want to be safe. They want to be able to get there. And there's different levels, so that we did something in Cape Verde recently where it was a mass tourism market. People want to go there because they want to get this beach holiday and they want it to be sunny, and they want it to be sunny in the times of year where it's not sunny where they are. Now, a lot of places have that, you know, in Africa especially, there's lots of sunny places, but there are other things. Maybe people want to explore the jungle. There's wildlife in certain places which you wouldn't see anywhere else. So you could have, you know, you can promote all sorts of different things. I think key is can you get people there relatively affordably? Because if people can't fly there affordably, then or get there relatively affordably, then it's going to be hard to persuade people to come in any numbers. If you do a very boutique, very luxury hotel product, then that doesn't matter quite so much, because people will, affordability is less important. But transport links is important, and I think safety, and then having something that people, that will interest them. And I think everywhere has something of interest.
Yeah, obviously safety is a key, and we had many discussions on safety, security around this, and it's a key. Transportation is a key. Many of our members at World Tourism Network are concerned about big industries, like in the hotel industry, the Marriotts, and these guys. They're doing a lot of good, but are they really sustainable in a way that they generate meaningful jobs and meaningful investments for local communities? Can they operate safety? Or what support do you think there should be for medium and smaller size businesses to have a chance to compete with the big industry, specifically in regions where the big industry isn't there yet? I mean, when they're still exploring. Is it a danger for a family to invest their life savings and the life savings of an entire community in building a lodge, for example, and then the next day the lodge works fine, and a big hotel company comes in and they have to close the doors? How do you keep the sustainability in this?
We have a team in Africa as well, and it is different. Then that's a very good question. Listen, I don't think the big brands are bad. But
no, I'm not saying this. I'm not saying this at all.
Yeah, no. Yeah. And I know, I'm not. But I mean, I think they have a place. People, especially in Africa, in the past, a lot of international travelers felt more comfortable and secure going to a bigger brand than to an independent hotel, where they perhaps don't have that confidence that they're going to get what the brand promises to them. How does a small, I mean, I think in the hotel industry is a risky business, like every business. I think you can do great things on a small scale, but it helps to have get good advice. I mean, I'm not trying to plug myself here, but I think I think lots of people don't want to stay in a big branded hotel, and they would rather stay in a more boutique environment. Then there are lots of groups that are doing that.
But boutique is no longer not related to big brands. If you look at the big brands, from Hyatt down to Marriott, Hilton, they all have their boutique brands. I mean, I'm a Hyatt guy. I'm a globalist with Hyatt, so I stay there more than 100 years a night. But I see now the small luxury hotel types, and even private apartment rentals. So is there a chance for the medium guys, the ones that really are independent and have maybe family run or operations, or wanted to invest into something?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, the reasons for asking a brand to participate, and they don't always manage. They can just be a soft brand that will drive people to your door. But even as an independent, if you do the right thing, there are tools out there that can help you to market your hotel around the world. I think the internet has democratized it a little bit. Having said that, there are lots of Hyatt people out there. Maybe you would choose, and if there was a soft Hyatt brand that you could go onto their website, maybe they would choose something like that as well. So you could, there are small luxury hotels and various other types of, hotel soft brands that you could put in as an independent that would help bring people to you and give them that confidence that you are the right thing. I think generally what the brand does is accelerates the ramp up a little bit. As an independent hotel, you're developing your own thing in your own community. you can certainly succeed. And I think, and I think some of the best hotels out there are these things, but they're difficult to discover. It takes a little bit longer for people to find them. You know, you don't have the big marketing, the direct line to somebody at you know, Condé Nast Traveler or something like that. Somebody has to somehow discover you and then write about you, and then, you know, and then you'll be very successful. You know, the entrepreneurs that develop these kinds of things have to be, you know, have to be clever at how they market them if they do them themselves. And that's what, you know, sometimes the brands help to bring to the table. But it's not to say it can't be done without a brand. I think it certainly can. And there are some really great properties that are not branded with a global brand.
Yeah, no, and it's also about training, obviously, training in marketing, not only hotel operations. You know, you see, I've seen in Africa some fantastic places, lodges there run fantastic. No one knows about them. And then when you see why, because they operate with a Gmail address and a website with a local name, no one can ever remember. So, and then, of course, when you deal with a brand like Marriott or like Hyatt or like Hilton, you have that in place. This could be a help also for someone to look at a management company. It doesn't have to be the top guys. There are many medium and small size brands also, as you mentioned, like the luxury hotel group and many more, I believe. That could be helpful to develop new markets. And I think that's where your company comes in, right? So if anyone wanted to develop a hotel, or if anyone is listening to us, I know we have a lot of ministers of tourism who love to listen to us, and they say, well, we want to build something here. We want to develop our hotel industry. Would they contact you, or?
Sure, that we'd love them to contact us. I mean, easy to find me on the website. I run our website is pkfhospitality.com, and I run the London office, but we have a tourism master planning department if that's what they want. If they need a feasibility study to understand the market, or market study, we do that kind of thing on a very regular basis. I mean, all over the world. So we've really worked in pretty much almost every continent. I think we might be missing Antarctica at this point, but everywhere else. And you know, we like to, and we've been doing it for, you know, since probably the 1920s as a brand and as a company, helping hoteliers, helping governments to understand their you know, the potential of tourism in their market. So, you know, we'd be delighted to have a conversation. We've got a team of around about 100 people internationally. We've got about 20 offices around the world, in different countries. So, you know, we have people on the ground as well as an international pool. We work as one company, so we send the right people to the right project. Doesn't matter where we're located. You know, we're an international business, and hospitality and tourism is an international business. So we'd be delighted to talk to any of your listeners. Personally, they can Google me or link in with me, or just look at our PKF Hospitality website and find one of our team.
No, wonderful. And of course, you can also attend the Reset meeting in London if you are in London, or if you're planning to travel to London. And you find all the details if you go to our website, wtn.travel/reset, wtn.travel/reset. And if you forget this, just click on contact, send us a note, and we'll be happy to guide you. And as you said, this will also be live streamed. We're going to live stream it on our live stream channel on eTober News when it's there, and repeat. And of course, when we're done live streaming like this conversation as well, it's always on YouTube or on Vimeo or on breakingnews.travel or on livestream.travel. So you find it everywhere, but it's nothing beats to be part of it. So if you are in London, I think this is really the place to go. It's the Churchill Hotel in London. And thank you so much for being a guest today. This was a fascinating discussion. Hopefully we can do more, because I think a lot of our members are interested in what you're doing. And if you want to join World Tourism Network, or anyone else listening who's not a member, just go to wtn.travel, click on join. We'd love to have you on board, and you can even start your own interest group. So if you wanted to do an interest group, in your case about hotel development, we don't have this yet, but we may have a number of takers who want to be part of it. And that's how the conversation starts, because after all, what we are a network. For those on eTurbo News watching us now, this will repeat every 2 hours for the next 24 hours. And after this, you find it if you just go on our YouTube channel or on breakingnews.travel, and you can listen to it again. But we're going to have some more sessions before September 16th, so stay tuned. And again, hopefully we see you in London, and thank you so much for being on our show, and good morning, good evening to London. It's now when we record this Tuesday night at 11 before midnight, and I'm not bored. I'm not even tired. You really had some good information. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Jürgen.
Okay.
It was really fun. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to plug the event, but also to talk a little bit about hospitality with you. It's a great chance to meet you. Thank you.
And stay cool in London. If you need a little bit
Thank you.
cool, come over here. You know, it's only 27, 28. We're fine.
Oh, it's over 30, I think now.
All right.
Very good.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank